folks. Welcome to another edition of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson, Douglas McKenzie here again to talk to one of our cronies from around the Burns world. Hi Jim, how you doing?
Fine Douglas, doing great today. Hi everybody.
Tonight's guest, folks, is the Secretary and Treasurer of Kirkconnell Burns Club. Cronies everywhere, please welcome John Watson.
Good evening, Douglas. Good evening, Jim. Thank you very much for inviting me along to your podcast. I've been watching the podcasts as they've been released and find them very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's interview.
Thanks, John. Nice to see you. And are you tonight in Kirkconnell, are you?
Yes, I'm in Kirkconnell, Douglas.
You would be the beautiful weather that we've been having in Mauchline as well.
Well, I've been travelling about the country today, so I've not seen a great deal of the weather. I've been right down as far as Dumfries this afternoon. So.
Very good. Now, John, you'll know if you watch the podcast that our first question is always the same. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly, looking forward to it, Douglas. I was brought up in Kirkconnell. I'm very proud of that. I was brought up with my mother, and I'm the youngest of three. I went to Killahome Primary School. In Kirkconnell or in Killahome, we lived in Polveoch Road, which was right next to the kind of hub to a place called the Store Park. Now, as you're probably aware, it's the Store Park relates to the store's a local cooperative, and the football park was directly behind the cooperative, so it was always known as the Store Park. We used to come home from school. We used to get changed out with skill clays and get into our shorts and our fitba strip, with our fitba bits and our shin gears, and away in the park with a ball. There was no days of computer games or anything like that, neither was. So we used to play out there playing fitba. Keep up to 20 years playing in the park at the end time. We would get shouted in for our tea. We would finish our tea as quick as we could so we could get back onto the fitba park. Now, it was cocker a henny to get in at that time, so you could leave the park playing with the in team, but when you come back on after your dinner, you were actually playing with a different team. but it was wonderful, and I've got to say that we would play there to darkening come down, and then we would get shouted in for a bath, and you put your supper and then away to your bed, and you got up the next day, you went to the skill, and it just repeated itself. And it was a great experience, and I say there could be 20 to 30 of us playing in that park at any time. I was always asked when I was a young boy, what did I want to be? And I think in the days, every young boy wanted to be a professional football player. And that stuck with me for a long time. So as I got to about primary 7 at Killahome Primary School, I was fortunate enough, along with our 2 or 3 boys from Kirkconnell, Killahome and Sanquhar, to be invited up to Cumnock to play. And the team that was up in Cumnock was a team called Nottingham Forest Boys Club. Now, Nottingham Forest Boys Club was a kind of feeder club for Nottingham Forest. And the manager up in Cumnock at the time was a guy called John Crawford. Now, I don't know if you know about John, but John went on to be a very successful manager with some amateur teams, some junior teams, and he was also director of the Youth Football Academy at Ayr United. Yeah,
I know who John is, yeah.
Right, he's still a great friend of mine, and I have a lot of respect for John in the football world, and I know a lot of people have. So we played up at Nottingham Forest Boys Club, and we got the opportunity to get into Nottingham for 3 days. It's been part of the boys club. And if I was truthful, I don't know if I really appreciated what we were doing at the time. But as I think back on it, the manager was Brian Clough.
Wow.
And met Brian Clough, but he was a Nottingham Forest football manager. As I thought about it later on in years, how lucky I was just to meet this guy. But there were some great players at Nottingham Forest at that time. There was the time your Archie Gemmels, your John Robertsons,
yeah,
Kerry Burns, John McGovern, all great Scottish players. So, but a good 3 days down there. And we played a couple of games within the 3 days, and the scouts for the main team was there. So I must have done something right. because I didn't get contacted to see if I'd be interested in getting back down.
Good.
At that time, it was schoolboy forms. But my mother was a firm believer that there was too many boys would be picked for schoolboy forms, then be dumped in the scrap heap and they'd nothing to back it up. So she was a firm believer to saying that you need a trade background behind you. You need something behind you if you get left in the scrap heap. So I was never pursued any further. So I didn't go back down to Nottingham Forest. But John Crawford left the boys' club and went to Ayr United.
Yeah.
So the following year, he actually approached me to see if I'd go to Ayr United. So by that time, I was in the first year at Sanquhar Academy, and my main things at Sanquhar Academy was the technical department, the PE department, and obviously the other subjects that I had to take, is the mandatory subjects, maths and English and a bit of language. But I was really enjoying my fitness still at the days, along with learning some other stuff at the school. And I was fortunate enough in the school at that time, it was banded into 2A1, 2B1, 2A2 and 2B2. Well, I was fortunate enough to get into 2A1. I wasn't the most academic, but I held my head above water. And I was middle of the class in the 2A1, so I was quite pleased with that. With the football, there was a bit of conflict between the school teams by that time and the Ayr United teams, because I was having a great experience as a boys club player at Ayr United. I was leaving Kirkconnell in the morning at 8:15, getting the bus to Ayr, and I always mind we used to meet at the railway station at Ayr, and there was an Ayr United minibus that would take us to whoever we were playing. It could be Celtic Boys Club, it could be Partick Thistle Boys Club, it could be Gartcosh Boys Club. We played our game, we travelled back to Ayr, and I got the bus back down to Kirkconnell at night. And it was 12 hours you were away for a day. Playing football for an hour and a half of that, but it was absolutely brilliant. It was a great experience. And I was fortunate enough during that time when I was training up at Ayr, that two of the guys in the first team at Ayr lived in Dumfries. Wee Wally McLean was the manager, supported with Jim Fleeton at the time. But the two guys in the Fleece would pick me up in Kirkconnell, take me up for the training. I would do the training with the boys club and back to Somerset, and I'd have my tea and toast with the first team before we left to come back down the road. And it was great. It was an absolutely wonderful experience. During that period, Douglas, we were invited to Sweden to play, to represent Ayr United in the Gothia Cup, which I don't know if you've heard of it before. So in 1982, I went to Sweden with Ayr United to represent them in the Gothia Cup. And we had a great run in the tournament, a great experience and a great camaraderie with all the boys. We got as far, I think, if I remember right, it was, we got to around about the quarter-finals of the competition, and a team for the Cameroons actually beat us. And I can always remember that I was quite a big boy for my age at that time, but I was 8 inches shorter than only the team for the Cameroons. I still don't know if they were playing under the right age level, to be honest. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. So Ayr United approached us again to see if I'd be interested in signing a schoolboy form. But my old mother stuck to her guns to say, no, it's a trade background you're needing, and which I've got to thank her in later years. So that was my kind of early days at Killaholm Primary, and then moving on to Sanquhar Academy.
Yep. So who else was who was playing in their first team in these days?
Did you like your Kevin Herritons and Malky Adams, Robert Riley? All these guys were playing in the first team, and it was great just to be involved in it. And it was in the wee tea room next to the dressing room on a Tuesday night after the training. Yeah,
I know it well. I've been working behind the scenes at Ayr United since about 2005.
Okay. Another guy that was involved, Douglas, you might know him at the boys team, and he's a great stalwart for any football in Ayrshire, is Ozzie Finlay.
Yeah.
And Ozzie's still to the fore, and he's on Facebook and he regularly sends some messages.
Good. It's a good family club. People tend to stay there once they get involved. It's been good fun.
I remember years later, when I said we went to the Gothia Cup, we had a training session at Craigie, and Willie McLean came along, as the first team manager along with Jim Fleeton, and joined in a training session with us. And I was a centre half, Douglas. I was never a person to shrink my tackles. But I did slide in at the end with Willie McLean. I thought that's maybe not the best thing I've done for my career. But anyway, but we got on great, and I really enjoyed it. So I did. But I was
anyway, you mentioned Sanker Academy that you moved on there. It was Big Bill McIntyre the headmaster then?
Yes, Bill McIntyre was the headmaster, and a lot of the Cumnock guys, Billy Wallace, a lot of them. And one of the teachers that really encouraged the football at Sanker Academy was Jimmy Copeland. I don't know if you remember Jimmy played for
No, I don't know that name. Yeah.
Jimmy played with Kilmarnock. But Bill McIntyre was the headmaster at that time.
He taught me French at Cumnock Academy, or tried to teach me French.
As I say, I spent a lot of my time in the PE department and the technical department. Our PE teacher at the time was David Dixon, who was for Dumfries, and there was always a bit of conflict because I wanted to play Very United on the Saturday, but they wanted me to play with the school team on the Saturday, and that did cause quite a lot of issues because I was kind of digging my heels in and saying, no, I'm enjoying it up at here, and but we got by that. Eventually, got by that, and I really enjoyed the technical subjects at Sanker Academy, engineering science, your technical drawing and woodwork. Which led me on to the trade that I finally got when I was 15.
Yeah. And what was that? I
was offered an apprenticeship with a local builder. It was Thomas Milligan and Son, Cam Milligan and Sons, and they offered me a bricklaying apprenticeship. So back to my mum, when she heard that, it was straight away, that was a yes. There was no thinking about it. So I left the school on the Friday and started with T. Milligan Sons on the Monday as an apprentice bricklayer. So part of that, as you're probably aware, I had a block release at the Dumfries Gallery Technical College.
Yeah.
And just kind of finishing off on some of the football stuff, where I attended the college, and I was fortunate enough to be picked for the college team to play against Carlisle College. And I was 17 by this time, still playing up at here, but I was 17 by this time. And we didn't have a car, but my aunt and uncle had a car. So that night, the football was on after the tech to play Carlisle. And they gave me a loan of their car to drive to Dumfries. And I thought this was great. Getting a young boy, passed my test, 17 all the way to tech myself, playing football and then driving home. It felt really good. So unfortunately in that game, as I say, I didn't shirk a tackle, and I went into a tackle and I think something wasn't right after the tackle. So my leg had actually started swelling up, so I kind of taken off, I limped off the best I could, and in these days I wanted home. So I picked up my stuff in the dressing room, into the car, and I drove up the road. And as I was driving up the road, I could feel my leg throbbing and getting sarer and stuff like that, just myself. So I managed to get home, stopped outside the front door, and I think I probably crawled into the house. And my mum used to work in the doctor's surgery. So she used to look at my leg, and she says, I think we need to phone an ambulance.
Oh dear. So
the ambulance driver stayed across the road for us. So we could have shouted to him. We phoned. They were in the days we didn't phone the ambulance direct. You phoned the doctor, and they instructed an ambulance to come out. So Rob Ralston, I think it was his first call out, to be honest, with the ambulance. He came and got me. So I drove with them freezing the car, and I got taken back down with the same place in the ambulance. So I did it all within an hour. But unfortunately, I had a fracture in my leg.
Oh dear.
And that was, truthful, that was any hopes I had of playing at a higher level of football, but it also halted my apprenticeship for a couple of months. But I continued with the football. I played with amateur teams, and I played with Killahome and Nistdale, but I played with Kirkconnell Amateurs, my main team, and I played with them for a number of years, and then went on to assist with the managing side of them.
Yeah, good. Oh, so you kept your interest.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're no longer here, Kirkconnell Amateurs. It's a sore day. The Dumfriesshire Amateur League is not the same as it used to be. Southern Counties that started to take more, and there was no
Yeah.
money involved when I was playing, but Southern counties were paying money to players, and it just didn't work the same.
No. No, it never does. Never does when money comes into it. But but that's the story. That's the story of football.
It is, and it's right through football now.
Aye, it certainly is. So what about, how did the career develop from there? You know, did you complete the apprenticeship?
Yes, I just my leg was healing. I was back, and I worked with Tam Milligan, and then I attended the college, and at the dates my sitting guilds. So that days it was 3 parts here: sitting guilds, your written, your practical, and your accreditation. So I was fortunate enough I got the 3. I got 2 credits and a distinction in my sitting guilds, and it taught me I wanted to do more than just bricklaying. I enjoyed the bricklaying side. It's a safe gaming, people, but it's not something as you get a bit older. So that gave me a good schooling. It gave me a good schooling, and I seen it in my apprenticeship with Tam Milligan. And then a year after that, I was actually approached by a company in Sanka, who wondered if I'd like to join them. Now they were more into conversions, house building, so agricultural work. It was away from the repairs and maintenance side of stuff to slightly bigger work. So
Yeah.
it then started involving your asbestos awareness, you're working at heights and various things. So I took up that post with them as a bricklayer, and a great bunch of guys working both with Milligan and it was Robert Thompson and Son. Great bunch of guys working there, and it was during that time that I met my wife. Well, I met my wife to be, who Mary's from New Cumnock. She's a New Cumnock lassie. So she is. So
all the best people are.
Well, I'll tell you about a story about our Mary about New Cumnock later on. But I walked away and I approached the boss of the firm at that time to say, look, we're looking to buy a house, we're looking to do this, we're looking to do that. What's the kind of guarantee you work for the next number of years? And to be truthful, at that time, you could pick and choose some jobs if you wanted. So he says, look, I could say there's 2 years work, it could be 3 years work. He says, but it depends what happens. And the Dumfries and Galloway Council at that time were setting up a direct labour organisation in Kirkconnell to service Upper Nithsdale. And we were looking for a multi-skilled builder, labourer, plasterer at that time. So I done a wee bit of everything because I'd been with weird companies. So I came up that post and I was with them for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
I started off in Kirkconnell as that, and then I moved on to the contract supervisor in Kirkconnell. Then I moved to Dumfries, to the main depot in Dumfries, and I worked as a project manager at a site in Dumfries. So working away there for the next 16 years with Dumfries and Galloway Council, travelling each day up and down, which was absolutely fine. And we worked with the council at the time. The drawings were produced by the architects, and we built to the drawings, or we delivered the projects to the drawings.
Yeah.
And we were renovating what would later become the Dumfries and Galloway Council's main offices out at Gareth Lonan. And the drawings weren't produced quick enough for what we were delivering, to be honest. So it was all political. So they were moving us back into other areas within the council, and I went back to look after void properties. And it really wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was still a job. And a job became available, or was advertised with Irvine Housing Association, which is a registered landlord, which is now Riverside, Scotland.
All right, okay.
It's Riverside, Scotland, but it was Irvine Housing Association at the time. So I joined them as a technical inspector. I really enjoyed that. I moved from contractor to client side and seen the different side of it. And I've been there for 14, coming on 15 years now, and I've steadily progressed through various roles, and I'm now the Asset Services Manager for Riverside, Scotland. So I head up the team in Scotland for reactive repairs, planned and capital works, future investment in our stock, make sure we're compliant, health and safety. A lot of stuff falls below the umbrella in my role, but I've got a wonderful team that works with me. A great team.
That sounds like quite a responsibility, all that stuff.
I say a lot goes into the team that works with. They specialise in their own subjects, and I try and pull everything together at the end to report to our board. So it's It's a good team, really good, enjoyable job. Working with the public sector. And I think for me, you're the chairman of Riverside Scotland. I was recently at a conference and he put it together. He says in some of the sector that you work in housing, you can do more in one day for a family than what people can do in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And a small issue to me is maybe a massive issue to somebody else, and we need to deal with these. So it's a rewarding job and it's an enjoyable job.
Yeah, good. And at some point during this, what, 16 years and then another chunky years, you made an honest woman of this New Cumnock lassie.
Yes, aye. So we get married at Mr. McGurk at New Cumnock Parish Church, so Reverend Alan McGurk at New Cumnock Parish Church. And I often tell this story at a supper, especially if I'm doing a toast to the lassies. With our wedding reception in the Loch Side, in the coach house, it was Mrs. Pink that was in there at the time.
Yeah.
Alistair Dick had moved out at that time. It was Mrs. Pink, and we had our first night's honeymoon in the Loch Side.
All right.
It's not the same Loch Side that there was then. I think it was Mark Brun used to have the Loch Side.
Yeah.
And it was olden days when it was just at the house. But I always say we get married in the church, and Mr. McGurk invited us back a year after our wedding to ask us how our first year of married life had been. And I said, they took the vanity of the peacock and the cunning of the fox. They took the venom from the viper and the jawbone from an ox. They took the brains for the skull of the monkey and the stinger from a bee. They put them all in a woman from New Cumnock, and you married her to me. And I always remember, I always try and stare at, if I'm doing a toast to the lassies, and it seems just to get the heckles up at the stare of the neck with them. So, but yes, we're married, and we're fortunate enough to have a daughter, Jill. And Jill's very active in the pipe band world.
Very good.
She's the lead tenor with the Royal Borough of Annan pipe band. And that's a great social life, Douglas. It's a great social life. And they're a competing band. So they'll play from Berwick right through Scotland up to Inverness and even across to Lurgan in Northern Ireland. So we follow Jill where we can with that. And we've actually booked a cottage up in Inverness for this year. It's a great social life, and it lets you meet a lot of different people.
Oh, tremendous.
So it does. And it's a busy life. She's 20, every Tuesday night she practices at Annan, so we take her down. Jill's coming 18 on her birthday, but she's waiting a date for her test. She's passed her theory test for her driving, but she's not passed her full test yet. So we take her down the Tuesday night to Annan for the practice, and then it's 2 weekends over the month usually. So it's pretty hectic, but it's really enjoyable.
Good.
And she's doing very well, Jill. I don't tend to bump people up a lot, but she's doing really well at school, and she's looking to go to Strathclyde University or Glasgow University. Oh,
excellent.
She's just done her higher, advanced higher prelims there and got good results. So Jill's looking to get into either law, Scottish literature, or English literature.
Oh, tremendous.
She's got three unconditionals for Strathclyde, and we're just waiting some word back for Glasgow. She's 2 applications away there. So. Very
good. Well, I'm sure her dad will be to help her with anything in Scottish literature.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. She's very independent, so she is. So.
And Burns had a few things to say about the law as well. So
yes.
So there's a couple of areas there you could help with. So we've heard all about you, John, and we've started to drift a wee bit into your interest in Burns, and especially with Jill being a piper probably means that she's at a few Burns suppers.
Look, she's a tenor. She's a drummer, Douglas.
Sorry, I missed that. So I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity for her to display that talent with the drums. I'm a great lover of drum music, so that's tremendous.
Oh, that's great. Her boyfriend's actually a piper with a air pipe band.
Yeah.
So it's great if we go away for the weekend and Harrison brings his pipes with him, and you've booked a cottage somewhere, and you're sitting in the hot tub and Harrison's playing the pipes in the background on a dark night. It's really good.
I hope it's a remote cottage.
It is.
Anyway, I'm going to pass over to Jim and get him to get you talking about your interest in Burns.
Well, John, the first question everybody gets is the same. How did you bump into Burns in the first place?
Hi, Jim. Yes, well, I could probably take that back to somewhere, probably about 1986, where I started to attend Kirkconnell Burns Club. I was 18 at the time, and I loved the camaraderie. Within 120 men sitting in a hall on a Friday night, they only sometimes met once a year. But the blether we had, listening to some great speakers, having laughs and fun. Never seen a bit of bother at a Burns supper. Never seen a bit of bother. I really enjoyed that. You don't at home at Nickway, somebody was at the same table with you or somebody at a different table. And what was a highlight for you? We spoke about that. And we would often end up at a party at somebody's house and sitting having a dram at your time in the morning. But that was probably my kind of first insight into listening to Robert Burns and some of the works of Robert Burns. But I actually joined the Freemasons in 1989. And that kind of opened up a bit of a different world for Robert Burns for me. I joined Lodge St Connell in Kirkconnell, and they had a small Burns club running. They'd had it running for about 2 years previous before I joined, and it was for Masons only. And I went to the first one, and again, a great night, 60 guys sitting in the Masonic Hall in Kirkconnell, and some wonderful speakers. I'll mention a couple of the speakers later on, but with great speakers turning up for these things and invited them, and never to let anybody down, which I thought was really good. So I started to get a wee bit more involved in the committee at St Connell's Burns Club, and started to help to organise it. And then in 1990-91, I was asked to propose a toast to the lasses at the supper, which I duly accepted. Hadn't done a speech before at that time, so I thought a bit of research into it, a bit of work, but bearing in mind what our audience was and what had been there, it wasn't fair, it wasn't a deep Burns supper, it was a light-hearted Burns supper. And if I mind right, that night chairing it could have been Stuart Clark, if I remember right, but also at the top table that night was which is still a great friend of mine and is a stalwart of Cumnock, and I think you'll know him as John Boyd.
Yep.
So I had John on the phone on Sunday. He's actually 92, John, now.
Wow.
And I had him on the phone on Sunday, and he's still the same John Boyd he was all 8 years ago. He can still tell you a story, and he can tell, still keeps you going and winds you up, and it's great company. After that speech that night, John actually invited me up to Cumnock Bowling Club the following year. So again, it was a mixed supper this time. Well, I'd always been at either all male in Kirkconnell Burns Club or all Masons, so it was mixed. So again, I wanted to pitch my speech right for that kind of supper. So Cumnock Bowling Club, 90 people on a Saturday night, and when I walked in, John met me, and he went through the back and had a dram before the supper started. Mary was with us, and we invited along Mary's brother and his wife, and they were sitting in the main hall. And who came in but Stuart Lanes?
All right.
And that night, the top table consisted of Stuart Lanes, Ian Farrell, Jim Morrison, and myself. So
wow.
I think I was kind of flung in at the deep end, to put it that way. But that really kicked off a lot for me, and I built up a great friendship with Ian Farrell and Stuart. Sadly, Stuart, you know, is no longer with us. And also with Jim, and that's when I get involved in more of some of the after dinner speaking stuff with Jim. But the relationship I built up with Ian, and it just escalated to there. As you know, Ian and Jim and Stuart at the time, they arranged numerous Burns suppers across Ayrshire and beyond.
Yeah.
And every time the phone went, and it was Ian, you Kent, he was looking, are you available for such and such a date? And it worked vice versa, because if I was looking for speakers, I had the guys to pull on as well. And what I like with the Burns circuit, nobody lets anybody do. So I've been fortunate enough to go to Scotland with Ian, without Ian, but that leads you on just at different bits all the time. So it is. Jumping back a wee bit to take a Lodge St Connell Burn Supper, I became the master of the lodge in the year 2000, 2001, and I had the great pleasure of chairing the Burn Supper. And our principal speaker that night was Enoch Curry.
Yep.
Now that again just was mind blowing for me. I had the pleasure of sitting next to Enoch that night. He delivered his memory, and once it was by, I thanked him very much, and we just get blathering away. And he says, "I've got a print of Robert Burns up in Turbolton that I'd like to come down and present to your lodge, and I'd like to bring some brethren for Turbolton down." So fortunate enough, as I say, I was on the chair that year, and Enoch come down his cell with 35 brethren that one night, one Thursday night,
Wow.
and presented it. And I'm pleased to say that the print's still in the lodge, displayed in the lodge to this day. And that introduced us to John Shirky and Niven and all them, so it did. So
Yeah.
Gavin Barry. So it just kept building itself up, Douglas. So it did. And that's really where I got involved with Burns to start with. I was still attending Kirkconnell Burns Club, and I was doing speeches here, there, and everywhere. So I was invited to Kirkconnell Burns Club. It started with a vote of thanks one year, and then the next year it was a toast to the lassies and so forth. And I done that. To finally, I think it was 2006. I was invited to do the Mortal Memory.
Yeah.
At your home club. Now I ken the boys when you're coming up, and I think when the president to do the memory, am I right in saying that?
Yeah. Newcomer, the retiring president does the memory.
Right. So I was invited to do the memory, and I think it was a move on with the committee that year, because the following year I was nominated onto the committee of Kirkconnell Burns Club. And I've got to say that the connection within the Masonic as well really helped Kirkconnell Burns Club obtaining speakers and out with. So that was where my grounding was with it. And then in 2014, the existing treasurer and secretary retired for Kirkconnell Burns Club, and I was elected that night at the supper. And I'm still here. I'm still the secretary and treasurer at Kirkconnell Burns Club. But it's it's been like for the last couple of years. It's not been where we wanted to be because of the pandemic. But we're getting there, and we've done exactly the same as yourselves last year. We had a wee Zoom so we could record it in the minutes. So we got together, and our supper would actually be tomorrow night if it was going ahead.
Yeah.
But it's quite apt that I'm doing this tonight and putting a wee plug in for Kirkconnell Burns Club as well.
Very good. Very good.
Well, with all the suppers you've been to, John, I mean, you've been doing the memory and toast to the lassies and various other things. You've been involved in poetry at all, and just as a matter of interest, what's your favourite sort of Burns poem? Yes,
I've got favourite poems, but it's not something I really get involved with myself. But we've got a great stalwart at Kirkconnell. It comes down every year. George Park from Newcomer. George does Tam O'Shanter, and I love Tam O'Shanter, and I love Death and Dr. Hornbrook, and I like Holy Willie's Prayer, and I like different people delivering stuff. The Twa Dogs, and there was big Hughie Mitchell, Ian Farrell doing the Twa Dogs, which was great. I thought Hughie Mitchell doing a reciting was just wonderful for me, and again Ian reciting is great. And we've got a young boy doing this right. He's not so young now, but Troy Barber as well, and Troy's really good. So we've got him along to the supper in the last couple of years.
Ah, very good, John. We've both seen Troy online. He did quite a lot for Bobby Jess during the pandemic.
Yeah, so it's not something I've really got involved in the reading side of it, but I always try to bring a bit of something into a supper, depending on what I'm doing, whether it's a toast to the lassies, or whether it's a memory, or whether it's a cronies. I like to bring small stuff into it, and concentrating on and every supper's different, whether it's light-hearted or whether it's deep. So I always try to bring patches in where I can reflect back in Burns.
Yeah. You mentioned Hugh Mitchell there. I always remember Hugh Mitchell did a lot of W.D. Cocker as well. It's the first time I ever heard W.D. Cocker's The Deluge. It was Hugh Mitchell that did it. He's a great loss.
We used to go to I've been about 4 times to a supper at Hamilton, and it was myself and Ian Farrell. It was the Hamilton Bowling Club, and they finished about 10 o'clock, and it's open to the floor after that. So it is, and Pretty quiet in night, so it was. So, but it's just you stand up, can you say something? You sit back down, and Ian stood up and done the rumour.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was absolutely brilliant, and stuff like that. Ian was great at turning his hand to it, and I think a lot of that came off of Big Hughie as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned George Park there. George is the reigning world champion for the John LePrake speaking competition that we used to hold in Muirkirk. So George was always a great reader.
Yeah, but when I advertised our supper just after George had won the championship, I just put it was in my Facebook page that a world champion would be attending, and I left it at that.
Very good.
But also through the suppers, I say, and through the Masonic, I've built up great relationships with the likes of Bobby Jess and Wally Dick and stuff like that. And
it can't all be good in your life.
Look, it's not always good, but it's just as good as you make it. You'll see the sign behind it. It says enjoy every moment.
Very good. If you can suffer Bobby Jess and Wally Dick, you're doing no bad.
Well, I've known them for a number of years, and I was fortunate enough. Wally asked me to install him into the chair at his mother lodge, so we've built up a great friendship.
They're great characters.
Yeah.
Well, better not say too much about them. Don't want them getting a wee bit carried away.
You mentioned some of that don't do much poetry. I don't, but one of the ones I really like, and it's Handsome Nell. I just think Handsome Nell's lovely. I know it's a song and it can be used as a poem, and I always like to get that in somewhere, whether it be it in Toasting the Lassies of the Memory. And I always say a story that if my daughter was that age, or Burnsy's age, and her boyfriend was 15, if you put pen to paper and put that about my daughter, I wouldn't need to ask him twice, kind of thing. So I just think the way Handsome Nell goes is absolutely lovely. So I do.
Any particular verse that you like more than others?
I like it right through, and it's well, once I loved a bonny lass, and I love her still. And while that virtue warms my breast, I love my handsome Nell. There's bonny lassies I have seen, and many full as braw, but the likes of Grace means, the likes I never saw. A bonny lass, I will confess, is pleasant to eat, without some better qualities, she's no a lass for me. But Nellie's looks are blithe and sweet, and what is best of all, her reputation is complete and fair without a flaw. She dresses icy clean and neat, both decent and genteel. And then there's something in her gait, does only dress look real. A gaudy dress and gentle air may slightly touch the heart, but it's innocence and modesty that polishes the dirt. 'Tis this and Nellie pleases me, 'tis this enchants my soul, but absolutely in my breast, she reigns without control. I just like that as a poem.
Well done. Perfect.
Well done. For somebody that doesn't do poems, you did pretty well with that one. No, it's just amazing that he wrote that as a 15-year-old. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, fantastic.
You've been to quite a lot of burn suppers. Any special burn suppers that you've attended?
I think every supper's got a wee special bit about it. Whether you're a women's guild in front of 20 folk, or whether you're at Brigadoon in front of 160 folk. But there is a couple I'd like to probably mention during this, and no particular order, but I've got to say Brigadoon. I was fortunate enough to speak at Brigadoon for the Irvine Paper Mill burn supper. 160 people, some Scandinavians there in their national dress. And you'll know Douglas, Jim, at Brigadoon, when you're getting piped in these stairs and you're doing the stairs into their main hall, and there's the bay window looking after the brig on the far side, the hairs in the back of your neck are certainly rising. So I was toasting the lassies that night, but fortunate enough for me, the immortal memory was been delivered by Joe Kennedy.
Oh, wow. So
I was sitting next to Joe at the top table, and the waiter at Brigadoon came round and asked us what we would like to drink. Well, I'm a whiskey man. So I said, I'll have a whiskey. I'll have a whiskey. And Joe, I don't know what Joe says, but the waiter went away and he came back and he says, is it a bottle or a half you would like, or a drink? And just at that, Joe said in about half, "I'll be a bottle," and turned around about. So he says, "We only have 2 bottles." He says, "It's either black bottle or Macallan Ruby." And again, without moving my lips, Joe says, "Macallan Ruby." So we got this bottle, we had a great supper. And at the end of the night, there was so much left in the bottle, not a hell of a lot left in the bottle. And I went to go away. I was in a taxi back down to Kirkconnell, and Joe shook my hand and handed me what was left in the bottle. And he says, "Take that home with you for some work well done." And that meant a real lot to me. And I attended a lot of suppers at Joe's after that, and I always used to love his introduction, where he would say, "How would you like introduced, Joe?" And he always told the story about Alabama. He just come back from Alabama, and then she introduced him and says, "You must be dyslexic." It was Balmaha that I said. So that was one that I really enjoyed, and that was at Brigadoon.
Aye, Joe, miss him every day. One of my best friends, and he probably bestowed the greatest honour I've ever had in my life. He asked me to speak at his funeral. But having said that, he told me what to say.
So another one that I really enjoyed was in 2019. I was invited up to Inverary Burns Club to propose a mortal memory. And it was a real pleasure. Myself and my wife went up, and it was in the Inverary Inn. And we were accompanied up by Ian Farrell and his wife, and Bletherskite. And it was an Ayrshire and Freeshire Burns supper. And what I liked about that was there wasn't a top table. So you sat in the body of the kick, and it was your turn, you went up to the lectern, you done your bit, whatever you were doing. But I also thought that night there must have been 12 entertainers with songs and poems, and it was a really, really good supper. But when they contacted me to see how to deliver the mortal memory, as you do, I decided I'd do a bit of research into it. And the year before me was the Glasgow lawyer, Len Murray, who delivered the mortal memory. And I thought, Jesus, what did I do to follow this man? I don't know if you've ever heard Len before. He's got a really deep voice. I've came across him in the Sportsman's Dinner circuit. But a thoroughly enjoyable evening. We've been doing really well. And we were staying in the Inverary Inn. So they presented us again with a bottle of whiskey at the end of it. And threw into the bar for a wee dram. Myself and Ian, his wife, and Bletherskite, and one of Bletherskite's the brother. One of the boys. Jim.
Bobby McCallum.
No, it wasn't Bobby. No, I know Bobby well. No, it was Jim McCallum. So Jim stayed up there. So unfortunately, the porter was coming, the bartender as well, and then he was a wee Spanish guy. So we were residents, so everything was going on to our room to stay at, which was absolutely fine. Then he had other things to do, so he was kept running back and forth to the bar and away somewhere else. So lo and behold, we had enough Uscabar with that time, and we opened my bottle of whiskey. So when I got up the next morning and went down for breakfast, everybody was there. We were all there in body, but my bottle of whiskey had disappeared. We drunk it that night before we went up. It was a great experience going up and staying overnight at the Inverary Inn. And the other one I really mentioned, I mentioned it earlier, was in 2006 when I did the Mortal Memory at my home club. I think for anybody to be asked to do that, it's wonderful, and should really take up that invitation. And I've spoke all the country, and as I say, crowds from 20 to 160. And we average between 100 and 120 at Kirkconnell. But when you stand up and it's 120 faces that you can, it makes a difference. But see, in Sherby, it's really good. And one of the things we do, Douglas and Jim, is we have a book, and everybody at the supper that night signs the book, and it's a keepsake. And often I'll go through that book and just everybody signed it. And it's amazing the people that's no wears any longer. It's good to look back at it times. But that's the kind of 3 suppers that's highlighted for me. But I've got to say, everyone's been wonderful. I've never been at a bad supper.
Good.
Well, Kirkconnell Burns Club seems to be really active in the way you're talking. Are you involved in any way, shape or form with the community, like the local schools or anything like that?
Aye, Jim. There's a few things. And I was heavily involved with things before, with the football and stuff like that. But Burns, and I like a Sunday afternoon with the boys in the bowling club, and I really enjoy that. And as I say, I'm involved with through stuff with work and stuff with Jill. But one thing I would really like to see in the local community is that a number of years ago, we tried to introduce Burns to Killahome Primary School again. I never get taught Burns. I never listened to Burns when I was at school, and I think it's very important. So at Kirkconnell, we've got a strong local Burns club with a strong local committee. And I would like us to try and promote Burns as a Burns club and work along with Killahome Primary School. And whether previously there's books to be donated, but I think we need to revisit that and try and invigorate it with the school again.
Yeah, that would be a good project. One of the great pleasures that I had for several years was visiting a primary school and judging their Burns competition. And it's fantastic to see the kids year after year growing up and getting a better understanding of Burns and the language and the poetry.
Yeah, one of the things we used to do at Kirkconnell as well is we used to get somebody from the school to come along to our supper that night and put them first on, have their meal, put them first on, and then they left. And I'd like to try and introduce stuff like that again.
Oh, that'd be great. Because the kids love it. The kids really get a lot out of it. Especially when it allows them to use their own language. For too long, they've been told that that's not the right way to speak. And when they see it in Burns, they realise that it is the right way to speak.
And I think that will progress. If we can get it early enough, it'll progress. Because I think we've got to be honest, we're all getting older. And we're not also got to be here forever. We need to think about what's coming up behind us and who's going to take over this. Because one thing we don't want to lose is our Burns clubs.
You've done a lot of Mortal Memories and various speeches over the years, but particularly Mortal Memories, you seem to have themes. Could you maybe tell us about your themes, and have you any plans to change them, to try different things in terms of the themes you use?
Yes, Jim, I think it's a great question, and I think you've got to try and do a bit of research and try and target your audience. I think what your audience has got to be like. Is it going to be a bowling club, or is it a golf club, or is it a Burns club? And I think I try, it doesn't matter what speech I'm doing, whether I'm doing the lassies, the cronies, a vote of thanks, or the mortal memory. I think I like to do a bit of research before it and try and imagine what my audience is going to be, so I'm prepared to go that night. In terms of, I would say, mortal memories, I think I've got various mortal memories that I use, and it depends where I am, as I say. So there can be a light-hearted night, where it's more maybe a Burns fair and it's a tribute to Burns, which I think is really nice. Or we can have, I've got a Masonic mortal memory for Masonic Burns suppers. I've got other ones with dates and facts. Some people like that, some people don't. I quite like to pick a topic and try and work in a topic, and that topic can be anything relating to Burns. And I think you've got to be careful with someone when you've got a toast to the lassies. I really love an immortal memory on the lassies, but you've got to be careful when there's somebody toasting the lassies after you. But for me, one of the ones that I would really like to do, and I'm working on it, is Burns in Ellisland and travelling up through the Upper Nithsdale Valley, stopping off at Wigham's Inn and Sanquhar for an overnighter and a dram, and then getting up through Newcombe and up to Mauchline. So it is to see Jean Armour. So that's one, it's work in progress, and it's finding the time to do it, to be honest. And I think that's one of the big things. I was laughing about suppers to Mary. This year, unfortunately, we know what's happened, but my first supper was booked for the 7th of January this year. And my last supper was the 24th of March. That's a quarter of the year.
Yeah.
And trying to fix another memory in between then can take a bit of time. But I'd really like to concentrate on something like Burns and Ellisland travelling up through the Upper Nithsdale Valley. And I say Wickham's Inn, and I think etched in the windows, we know that Wickham's Inn, and later put in the Kilmarnock edition. Envy if thy jaundiced eye through thy window chance to spy. To thy sorrow thou shalt find all that's generous, all that's kind. Friendship, virtue, every grace, dwelling in this happy place. So I think that's lovely, that Burns must have a good time travelling through the Upper Nithsdale Valley, stopping off at Wickham's Inn, and then getting up through Newcombe and on up to Mauchline.
Yeah, it's a great story, and you know, the fact that at one stage he had to move on because Mrs. Oswald's funeral procession gave him so much to write about.
Yeah. I think it'd be a lovely memory, that just to capture that in a memory. And I'm a firm believer when you're doing a memory, it's 20 minutes. It's no 45 minutes, 20 minutes, and it keeps the audience with you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And I probably think Jim as well, just when I said it'd be good to start with something at Ellersland, we capture the Upper Nithsdale Valley and we get to Mauchline. And again, the Mauchline Bells for me is just lovely. So it is as well. And I think that could be, it's based for the Mauchline girls, but that could be anybody that's in your village you could think about it.
And when we started this, you told us you didn't do much poetry, but you've done a fair whack during this episode, and now are you hinting that you're going to maybe finish off with the Mauchline Bells? Yeah,
so I like the Mauchline Bells. I think it could be done, Jim, with anybody. To be honest, I think you can relate it to Burns, but you can pick out 6 women in a village and you can say you can turn the names round about. So, I think in Mauchline there dwell 6 proper young bells, the pride of its place and its neighbourhood all. Their carriage and dress a stranger would guess. In London or Paris, they've gotten it all. Miss Miller is fine, Miss Markland divine, Miss Smith she has wit, and Miss Betty is broad. There's beauty and fortune to get with Miss Morton, but armour's a jewel for me of them all. And for me, I would finish an immortal memory of the Dumfries through Upper Nithsdale to Mauchline with something like that.
And it would be excellent. I think you would have everybody hanging on your every word. So, John, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks very much.
John, great chat. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to you. Great to be here.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Thank you very much, Jim.